What's up YouTube, it's Bossy and here I'm coming at you with another deck profile. We are staying with Magic the Gathering today and we're looking at yet again a modern deck. A modern deck that you either love or you absolutely hate, which are Bogles, or Bogles as a lot of people tend to say it. So I'm probably gonna bogle my way into saying both ways because I couldn't care less. What I care about is what the deck does. Now, a little bit of background. This was the first serious competitive deck that I built in Magic the Gathering back in 2014. Gosh, that seems like a long time ago now. um, and it's a great deck, and I absolutely love it. However, the time has arrived to say goodbye to this deck. So if you're interested in buying the deck as a whole, don't ask me to sell separate cards. Either the whole deck does go or nothing goes. But if you're interested in buying the deck, then hit me up and I will let you know the cost and potential postage fees or picking the deck up or anything like that. But without any further ado, let's go into the Bogles deck profile for Magic the Gathering modern format. So, starting with obviously the namesake card of the deck, we have 4 copies of Slippery Bogle. This little guy is a 1/1 that you can play for a green or a blue mana, and it has hexproof basically. When I think this was Eventide, hexproof wasn't a keyword yet, so this is why you don't just see hexproof. But Gladecover Scout already does say hexproof. The little 1/1 Elf Scout with hexproof for 1 green mana. Cute little card until you start to put loads of auras on them. And then we also have Core Spirit Dancer, which is an absolute bomb to play with. However, you normally tend to find that it's a little bit of a hit and miss situation with Core Spirit Dancer, because either your opponent sides all their removal out thinking that they can't deal with your hexproof creatures anyway, or they keep them in just to get rid of your Core Spirit Dancer, because this will be pretty much the only target they can use removal on there. They can't really do anything. Any one-on-one removal with your hexproof creatures. But Core Spirit Dancer is absolutely epic. I mean, she comes down for 2. Great artwork. Artwork is absolutely stunning. I love the artwork. Gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it, on top of whatever the aura will obviously grant her ability-wise. And whenever you play an aura spell, you draw a card. So an excellent little card draw engine. A lot of the people just tend to play Core Spirit Dancer with sacrifice in mind, that as long as they get to draw maybe a card or 2 cards off Spirit Dancer as they play auras after she was played, if she's then removed, it was still worthwhile playing her. So this is why you normally tend to leave her in even after sideboarding. And this is it for our creatures. We only have 12 creatures. So that's you really rely on drawing your Gladecover Scouts or your Slippery Bogles in your opening hand to be able to do something. If you don't, you're screwed. And this is what makes the deck obviously a little bit fragile. Going into the auras, definitely the best aura in the deck, or within the top 3 best auras in the deck, is Daybreak Coronet. One of the reasons why people even run this deck is because Daybreak Coronet. Enchanted creature has to have another aura on it for you to be able to play Daybreak Coronet, and they also have to have the other aura, so you have to be careful keeping Daybreak Coronet around. You normally want to put another 2 auras on your creature when Daybreak Coronet is around, but it grants +3/+3 first strike, vigilance, and lifelink for measly 2 white mana. So it's the bomb. A Pauper All-Star, not just a great card in Modern, but also in Pauper. Ethereal Armor, which grants your creature first strike and +1/+1 for any other enchantment you control. That can be aura or any other enchantment as well, which you should definitely keep in mind. especially if you're playing with some other enchantments like Leyline of Sanctity or the sideboard. That will also give you a pump. And of course, we have 4 copies of Rancor, which has always been an absolute all-star card through the history of Magic. For 1 green mana, you get +2/+1 trample on your creature, and if Rancor is put into the graveyard, you return it to your hand. So that is pretty good, and I would definitely say these 3 are the best auras that you will find in the deck. If you have a couple of these in your opening hand with the Bogle, then you're definitely off to a very, very good start. We have 2 more copies of Pseudo Rancor, which is Griff's Boon. It's certainly not as good as Rancor, but it does grant you flying, which most of our auras actually don't do. And that's one of the main reasons why I went with Griff's Boon, is because you actually do want to get flying for your creatures. It can be almost as good as being unblockable in some situations. And for 4 mana, you can return Griff's Boon to your hand from the graveyard to the battlefield attached to target creature. Anytime you could cast a sorcery, so obviously you can't do it. You can only do it in your main phases. It's still a really good ability, though, especially late game when you got loads of mana, nothing to spend it on. A recurring enchantment aura can be super useful, and it can really turn the tide of the game. Then we got the Totem Armors. We got 2 Hyena Umbras, which gives you first strike +1/+1, and the all-important Totem Armor. So if the enchanted creature will be destroyed, you remove all damage from it and destroy the aura. So this is the other saving grace if our opponent will be using sweepers that obviously don't target specifically, but says each creature. Then we can sacrifice our Hyena Umbra and keep our guys around. And we got another 4 Totem Armors here in the copies of Spider Umbra, which grant us +1/+1 and reach, so we can actually deal with the pesky flyers. Also, Totem Armor does the same thing as Hyena Umbra. Then we got 2 copies of Spirit Mantle here. Having protection from all creatures is just brilliant. Basically, gives us an unblockable Bogle or a core Spirit Dancer, and there's a little +1/+1 bonus on top of that as well. But primarily, it's played to give us protection from creatures, so we don't have to worry about swinging in. Again, it's on par. It's not on par. It's a little bit better than Griff's Boon, of course, because this is a lot better than flying. But it serves very much similar purpose in the deck. And then we got 3 Cartouche of Solidarity, which when this card was printed in Among Cat, this really brought Bogles back into the game. One of the issues is obviously what happens if we need to sacrifice our creature, like against the Liliana of the Veil, which is definitely the bane of one of the bane cards, one of the arch nemesis cards of the Bogles deck. Well, with Cartouche, and this is one of the reasons why I play 3, is when you play Cartouche, you get a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance, and you know there's also the added benefit of getting +1/+1 and first strike on our creature. But before Cartouche came out, I used to run 4 Hyena Umbras. Now 2 Hyena Umbras being replaced with a Cartouche of Solidarity, because it's a really good card. If nothing else, we get another 1/1 warrior, which can sometimes ping in if if we're playing against a deck that doesn't really have creatures, which is fairly unlikely in a modern format, but still could happen. But more importantly, it gives us a chump blocker and potentially an edict target. So very, very good card. Some people tend to run it in the sideboard. I would definitely main deck it because it can be very useful. And then last but not least, this might be a tech choice, and certainly a lot of people would be running other cards. You could run Path to Exile here. You could run Mana Tithe, which is a catch-all card, and I do love Mana Tithe, and I used to run it in this deck as well. It's hilarious when your opponent taps out and you Mana Tithe them for 1 white color. Just so you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mana Tithe here. It's basically a 4 spike, but color shifted into white. It's just so funny when you Mana Tithe your opponents. And some people tend to run Spirit Link here. Basically, Spirit Link doesn't give your card lifelink, so you can basically have Daybreak Coronet and Spirit Link as well, and you would gain twice the life when your creature deals damage. But I run 3 Keen Sense because I love drawing cards. And it certainly helps with the aspect, especially if it's early game and you can attack in. Let's say you have a Griff's Boon and you have a Keen Sense on turn 2 to give to your Bogle. You're attacking with a 2/2 flyer, which is not too. It's not a lot of damage, but you get to draw a card when you deal damage to your opponent, and that can be very good. So I run the 3 copies, and this really just helps me curve out quite nicely. Works really well with Core Spirit Dancer. Of course, it's almost like a fifth, sixth, seventh copy of Core Spirit Dancer. But certainly the ability that Spirit Dancer gives you. And some people tend to run the full play set of Leyline of Sanctity and main deck. I don't have those cards because I can't afford it. But you could certainly look at taking out 3 Keen Sense, maybe a Cartouche to run the 4 lane line, and then you are basically protected from discard. You're protected from Liliana's. You're protected from so many things with that. It's a great card, but you have to draw into it. And then now into the lands to finish off. We got 4 copies of Windswept Heath, 2 from Tarkir and 2 from the good old Invasion set. The artwork on this, guys, is just so beautiful. Check that out. Check that out. I hope you get to see it properly, because this is why I still play Magic. This type of artwork is just absolutely amazing. And it's for sale, so if you want to buy this deck, hit me up because I am willing to sell it. And we have 2, 3, 4 copies of Temple Garden, of course, to give you something to search out with your Windswept Heath. Definitely the shock lands in Modern allow you to play a lot of versatile 2, 3, 4, 5 color decks even. So 4 copies of Temple Garden, a must-have in this deck. Another must-have is Razor Verge Thicket, and I do love these lands as well. That if you play when you have 2 or fewer lands in play, they come into play untapped, which is great for dual lands. I absolutely love these cards because I do love decks that run a low land count. And you have a fairly good chance to draw into these before you get more than 2 lands down. You can have 2 lands down and then play Razor Verge Thicket, which will still be coming into play active. Later on in the game, if you have more than that many lands, you don't really care about Razor Verge Thicket anymore. Then I run 2 copies of Sunpetal Grove. If you decide to run this deck or maybe buy it off me, you could of course put another couple of fetch lands in here, but I don't have any more to go into this deck. But if you have a forest or a plains in play, then it will come into play untapped, otherwise it will come into play tapped. We do have 4 copies of Temple Garden to ensure that our Sunpetal Grove will come into play untapped, and we also have a couple of basics. We have 2 plains, and we have 1 forest, which also allows us to have Sunpetal Grove come into play untapped. So there isn't a lot of worry about that not really working. And then last but not least, we got 2 copies of Horizon Canopy. I used to have the old type Future Sight copies, then I sold those, and then when obviously modern Iconic Masters came out, I got 2 copies back from Horizon Canopy. Arguably, yes, you would run 4 of these, and this is just such a good card, really. Obviously, paying 1 life, not really good, but it's the only land that will you can sacrifice to draw a card for a very low mana cost of 1. And last but not least, we have Dryad Arbor, which is our land creature, our forest dryad, again, as you can see. No expenses were spared in getting this card. It just shows when I got into Magic, I really wanted to get decks pimped out. There was a little controversy about this card. Obviously, some people kept it with their mana, with their lands. So coming up was an issue. You should always just have it with your creatures, like how you do with your Llanowar elves as well. Think about this card as a Llanowar elf, which doesn't have a mana cost. Very good again against Liliana decks, for example. If you have a spare fetch land that you didn't crack, you can actually get Forest Dryad because it's forest. Um, you can't tap it for mana the turn it comes into play because she has summoning sickness. And I would like to point out to you guys that we got a couple there kissing, which is really cool. So this is it for the deck. It took me, back in the days, it took me a long time to fish all the cards together. So yeah, but the one thing I found out that this kind of deck is only good if you take to tournaments, maybe local game store tournaments as well. But around the kitchen table, your friends will hate you because there is no interaction with this deck, which is the beauty of it for some people. If you don't like decks that interact with your opponent, this is the deck for you, or Affinity. And I don't really like a lot of interaction because it makes gameplay a bit more easy. But then again, sometimes I do, and I got decks for that as well. Either way, as I said, hit me up if you want to buy it. But the least you could do is give this video a like, leave a comment below, let's start a conversation. Please share it with your peeps, with your family, with your cats and dogs, with your local game store guys that you run with. And yeah, besides that, just peace out, YouTube. Bastian signing out.